Welcome to the Boston Celtics News Feed right here on clnsmedia.com. Powered today by SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek mobile app. Go to the upper right-hand corner. Enter the promo code Garden Report. Get your Paul Pierce Sunday tickets on SeatGeek and save $20 because you're a listener of the Boston Celtics News Feed. I'm Nick Gelso, joined by my old buddy, my compadre on Beats and Eats, and that's Ty Ray. Because why? We're the old men on the network. We're going to break down our top five Boston Celtics of all time. I'm going to shift it over to Ty Ray now because you cue the top five so well, Ty.
I do, and at number five, it's not Paul Pierce, Nick, and I know his retirement ceremony is on Sunday, but at number five, for me, it is the late, great JoJo White. Seven-time All-Star, two-time champion, almost a third-time champion. That's for another podcast, the banner that got away in the early 70s. But yep. JoJo White, he was Mr. Smooth, man, and just so key in that 76 finals against the Suns, that triple overtime, game number 5. JoJo White, not just a great man, a great player on the court, but a great man off the court, too.
And you interviewed him a bunch of times, I think.
Yeah, I love the guy. I have great admiration for him. May he rest in peace. He represents what being a Boston Celtic is all about.
Gotta agree with you there, but he didn't make my list. Sorry, JoJo. My number 5 is Sam Jones. Jones, 10-time champion, Ty. That's second most in NBA history, only to Russell. He's one of only 3 players. I think Russell, him, and his brother were on that 8 consecutive titles in the 60s. So think about it. He only played 12 seasons, 10 championships, Mr. Clutch in the playoffs, and not spoken about enough at all. He's my number 5, Sam Jones.
You're absolutely right. Not spoken enough. It's not spoken enough about, and also not getting enough credit. In my book, at my number 4, Kevin McHale, who reinvented the position. Was there anybody with better moves? Sixth man of the year, multiple titles. He won 3 as a Celtic, was part of that huge turnaround for the Celtics in the late 80s. Kevin McHale, of course, part of the greatest trade of all time, McHale and Parrish for Joe Barry Carroll.
Swipe. That was the biggest swipe, yeah. There's Red Auerbach right now smiling down on you for putting McHale on that list, but I did not. My number 4 is the truth, Ty. It's Paul Pierce. He makes my list. McHale did not. JoJo did not. Reason being longevity. Paul Pierce, 15 years in Boston. All 15 years he played at a high level. Only 1 title, but he was such an offensive force, so good, so synonymous with the city, and hung through something that is so unheard of in today's NBA. If you've seen on Twitter, I've been fighting with everybody, Ty, about LeBron, teasing his move in the offseason. Paul Pierce stuck through the lean years in Boston. That's why he's the truth. That's why he's the legend. That's why he's on number 4 on my top 5.
And I actually had his jersey when I was a youngster, Nick. I wore his jersey. Hondo, John Havlicek, multiple titles, could do it on both ends of the floor. What can you say about Hondo? And also just, once again, as a trademark as a Celtic, a great gentleman.
Plays right into my number 3 tie, which is Hondo as well. Same as similar to Pierce, longevity, 16 seasons in the league, a boatload of titles. I think he had, 8 titles? But 16 seasons, 13 All-Star appearances, 11 All-NBA, and 8 All-Defense. People forget what a great defender Hondo was. And he stuck through, again, that 2-year stint where Russell retired. He transcended the Russell era to the Dave Cowens era. Like you said, Ty, what can you say about Hondo? He's so classy. He is my number 3.
Mr. Clutch, right? He could do it all on both sides of the court. I'm glad you said
Never
that.
Stop moving.
I don't think he got enough credit as far as his defense was concerned, but John Havlicek, number 3 on the list. Okay, Nick, who's your number 2?
Well, it's your turn, but you're sticking it to me. This is the toughest one for me, Ty.
This is easy. This is easy for me.
It's easy. It's easy in a way that you have to go with the number 1 as who are both our number 1s are. I'm going to put Larry Bird at number 2, even though he's the reason I'm in the business, sports business. Larry Bird meant everything to me. I think most people who are listening to this short podcast have done enough YouTubing and ESPN classics of Larry Bird to know why he was named the legend. 3 championships, 3 consecutive MVPs. People forget he was an all-defensive member as well in the NBA during his younger years. An amazing rebounder, one of the best passers of all time. He's my number 2, and he is better. I would take Larry Bird on my All-NBA team before I take LeBron James all day long.
And at number 2 for me, Greg Kite. No, seriously. No, number two
Green stopper.
Yeah, he was. Number 2, Larry Bird. Obviously, Larry Bird, 25-10 for his career. Think about that, Nick. 25-10 with that.
Where are the
of
assists?
His,
7.
Yeah, I think around 7, 6.8, I think, something like that. I'd have to look at Basketball Reference. But I know he's a 25-10 guy throughout his career. And near the end, the guy could barely sit down.
Get out of bed. He couldn't get out of bed. You know, that's the thing, Ty, and we talk about keeping this short for the sake of the listeners. When you talk about Larry Bird, you could go on for hours. And I think that his most charismatic, or I don't know, he's not a charismatic guy. The most character moments of his career were in those last 2 years where he did stumble and he did struggle, and yet his last season in the NBA wearing a back brace, I think he averaged 20 and 9. I mean, unbelievable.
Nick, how about the playoffs coming out of the tunnel against the Pacers?
I could still cry watching those clips on ESPN. I could still hear Marv Albert saying, "And here comes Larry Bird," and he comes out after breaking his cheek and just takes over the game. The other thing is, Ty, I think we both will agree, the competition in the league was just so much
insane.
Higher.
And
insanely good.
I feel bad for the NBA fan today who didn't live through that, because it truly was something special. The 80s were amazing. And no offense to LeBron or the great Golden State teams that we have today, and they are great. The Warriors are great. But I don't think they can hold a candle to those old Celtics teams and those old Magic-led Laker teams. That was the other thing I was going to say about Larry Bird. He came in during the dark days of the NBA, the late 70s, when the league was having a hard time getting traction. Remember, we had the NBA Finals on tape delay. The Rockets Celtics were on tape delay. You could not see playoff games on live television unless I think you had TNT.
Not even then. TNT wasn't there, dude. Think about that.
TBS.
I mean,
TBS
I think was, but I don't even think they were playing live. The first live finals of the decade was 84, Bird and Magic. That's sick. So you got to think about all the finals greatness people watched on tape delay, you know, where Magic beat the Sixers twice or once, and the Sixers beat them, or twice. The Sixers beat them once. The Celtics won a chance. All that tape delay. You watched it after you already knew who won the game.
And you and I do a pop culture podcast called Beats and Eats. Larry and Magic were in pop culture. From the Converse ads to, do you remember the McDonald's ads? Off the roof, off the floor.
Yeah.
And that they were playing the game of horse. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But they were part of the fabric of America in the 80s.
Whether Larry liked it or not, he was part of pop culture. We know Magic rolled in it. He loved it. And the Forum, the fabulous Forum in the 1980s, was the Studio 54 of sports. I mean, we have Lydia Cornell on. She had a front row seat for all those games, and she doesn't even know the difference between a center and a forward. But it wasn't about the game. It was about the party and the experience, the band, the Lakers cheerleaders. Is this a Lakers podcast?
Paula Abdul, right? She was part of the Laker dance team. You had Diane Cannon. Did I just mention Diane Cannon before Jack Nicholson?
You did. You did, yeah.
John McEnroe. We could go on and on. We can't say it. We could do a whole podcast, of course, on Larry Bird, but we don't have enough time. So number one for me, Nick, I think this is easy. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, we can
number one for
together.
Me, Bill Russell, lives in my state, lives about 45 minutes from me. So proud to have him in my state. The legend, to me, the greatest player of all time.
Definitely the greatest winner of all time. I mean, we don't have to even go down the stats. They're overblown. He won it. He won Olympic titles, NCAA titles, 11 championships, more championships than fingers, heart and soul of the team, played during civil rights. We played under the fear of assassination, for crying out loud, played on championship teams, the biggest dynasty in NBA history, and up there in sports history, 2 half-empty arenas because they didn't want to go see the first ever African-American starting 5. thank God the city of Boston and the world has evolved a bit. But Bill Russell did it all, and he did it all under the pressure of civil rights and just being an African-American leader, first African-American coach in sports history, right?
I wish some of today's players would have the courage to stand up for things like he did back then. Russell played under death threats and excelled under that kind of pressure. Yep. And let's face it, Boston at that time, not exactly a friendly town to him. Yep. And he still succeeded at the highest level.
Before we wrap, let's do 1A, and that's got to be his partner, his cohort, and that's Red Auerbach. And without him, none of these players, sans maybe Paul, although I think he probably was consulted on Paul, still going then. All these players wouldn't have come to Boston if it wasn't for Red Auerbach. And here's a guy who does not get enough credit for his role in civil rights and in backing Russell up. No Red, no Russell. No Red, maybe no NBA. 1A has to be Red Auerbach.
I totally agree with you. And, of course, we haven't mentioned first African-American coach. We didn't mention that, I don't believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did say it, but you're right. My confusion is he the first in pro sports history or in NBA history?
That's a good question. We'd have to go back. I think in league history, professional sports.
I think it's pro sports, yeah.
Well, we've got 3 minutes left. We've got 3 minutes left. Let's do some quick honorable mentions. I would be remiss on this podcast if I did not.
Dave Cowens.
Oh, my goodness. The guy was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. Two-time champ, league MVP, going up against guys like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. What was Dave's height? He was not a 7-footer.
6'9".
Right, and he beat those guys with his speed. They could not rest. Dave could move up and down the floor like nobody's business. So tough. Diving for loose balls. Of course, you've got that great shot.
Well, one of the most iconic in NBA
Dave
history.
Diving
That's
for
our
the loose ball in the Milwaukee series in '74. The Celtics came back, beat the Bucks in that series. Dave Cowens, right there, honorable mention.
I'm with you on that. And if you have not listened to the Bob Ryan podcast, I'm going to say this quick. Cowens was his guest about a month ago, and it was just such an amazing episode. And one of the greatest was comparing Cowens to today's big men, and he really fit that mold. He was ahead of his time. My honorable mention, Ty, and I got to say it mainly, again, because of longevity, it's got to be Tommy Heinsohn. People forget, championship player, revolutionized the power forward position, really was the inventor of the hook shot, championship coach, and then broadcaster, as we know. I mean, Tommy is really the only connection that millennials have to the glory years in the NBA. So God bless Tommy Heinsohn. As long as he's talking into the mic with Mike Gorman, listen to what he says, absorb it, soak it up, and relish in the history. Ty, this has been fun.
It's been a lot of fun, and let's get some names in. We've got 1 minute. I'm just going to throw some names out. Robert Parrish, Bob Cousy, Don Nelson. You mentioned Tommy Heinsohn. Casey Jones, and somebody you and I absolutely love that never gets talked about, which is Dennis Johnson. Dennis Johnson. For sure. Love DJ. Danny, for that matter. Danny's so instrumental in the 80s.
Okay, if you're going to mention Danny, you got to mention Max. I mean, as badly as that fell out in the end, I mean, he contributed to 2 titles, MVP in the finals, and is a longtime broadcaster. And he's a fixture in the Celtics media room today.
Bob Cousy, if I didn't mention him already.
Revolutionized the game. We can Frank Ramsey, the first 6-man. I mean, just keep going and going and going.
You go on
greatness.
and
Paul
on
Silas.
and on. Paul Tiny Archibald. So we're so blessed as Celtic fans that we have these endless greats that we can name, and we're not even scratching the surface. I don't think we could go much deeper than this, Nick, but we have to wrap it up. This is for the Celtics News Feed, and I can't wait to hear it.